The autumn wind rustled through the fallen leaves on the wooden platform of Cedar Creek Station, as Isabella Martinez sat on the weathered bench, clutching a crumpled letter in her trembling hands. At 24, she had traveled from Philadelphia to this small frontier town in Colorado, her heart full of hope and her worldly possessions packed into a single worn satchel. But the letter she held contained news that shattered everything she had believed about her future. "Miss Martinez is not what we expected," the letter from her intended husband read. "She appears to be of Mexican heritage, which was not mentioned in our correspondence. The arrangement is therefore terminated. Transportation back to Philadelphia has been arranged for tomorrow's train." Isabella had spent her life savings on the journey west, answering an advertisement for a mail-order bride, placed by a rancher who claimed to want a loving wife and mother for his motherless children. Now she discovered that her heritage, something she had never thought to mention because it had never seemed relevant to her capacity for love, made her unacceptable to the man who had promised her a new life. As she sat in the golden afternoon light, fighting back tears and wondering how she would survive the return journey with no money and nowhere to go, Isabella became aware of a small presence beside her. A little girl, perhaps 5 years old, had approached the bench with the careful curiosity of a child who sensed sadness but did not understand its source. The child had blonde braids and wore a blue dress that looked handmade but well cared for. In her arms she clutched a brown teddy bear that had clearly been loved extensively, its fur worn smooth in places from countless hugs. "Are you waiting for the train too?" the little girl asked, settling onto the bench beside Isabella without invitation. Isabella wiped her eyes and managed a smile. "Yes, sweetheart, I am waiting for tomorrow's train. Are you traveling somewhere?" "No, I live here," the child replied matter-of-factly. "My papa is talking to the station master about supplies for our ranch. I am supposed to wait right here, but I saw you look sad, and Mama always said we should check on people who look sad." Something in the way she said "Mama always said" told Isabella that the little girl was speaking of someone who was no longer present. "What is your name, honey?" "I am Lucy Morrison." "This is my bear, Mr. Buttons. What is your name?" "I am Isabella." "It is very nice to meet you, Lucy." Lucy studied Isabella's face with the serious attention that children give to adults who treat them as equals. "Why are you sad, Miss Isabella? Did someone hurt your feelings?" Isabella felt fresh tears threaten as she considered how to explain adult disappointment to a child. "I came here thinking someone wanted me to be part of their family, but it turned out they changed their mind." "That is very mean," Lucy said with the absolute moral clarity of childhood. "Papa says that when you promise something to someone, you have to keep your promise, especially if it is important." "Your papa sounds like a wise man," Isabella replied. "He is the best papa in the whole world," Lucy said with fierce loyalty. "But he gets lonely sometimes. I can tell because he stares out the window at night after he thinks I am asleep, and he sighs a lot." Isabella found herself drawn into conversation with this earnest little girl, who spoke with the insight that often comes from children who have experienced loss early in life. They talked about Lucy's life on the ranch, her memories of her mother, and her observations about her father's efforts to be both mother and father to her. "Papa tries to braid my hair like Mama used to," Lucy confided, "but it never looks as pretty, and he does not know how to make the songs that Mama sang when I was scared of thunder." As they talked, Isabella noticed a man approaching from the direction of the station office. He was tall and lean, wearing work clothes and a cowboy hat, and moving with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to responsibility. When he saw Lucy talking to a stranger, his pace quickened slightly, but his expression showed concern rather than alarm. "Lucy, there you are," he said as he reached the bench. "I hope you have not been bothering this lady." "She has not been bothering me at all," Isabella assured him, standing politely. "Lucy has been wonderful company. I am Isabella Martinez." The man removed his hat, revealing dark hair and eyes that held the same sadness Isabella had heard in Lucy's description of his lonely sighs. "I am Daniel Morrison, Lucy's father. Please excuse her chattiness. She does not often get the chance to talk with new people." "Papa," Lucy said, tugging on his coat, "Miss Isabella is sad because someone broke a promise to her. They said they wanted her to be part of their family, But then they changed their mind and were mean. Daniel looked at Isabella with increased attention, noting her simple dress, her single satchel, and the way she held herself with dignity despite obvious distress. "I am sorry to hear that, Miss Martinez. Are you stranded here?" Isabella felt heat rise in her cheeks as she admitted her circumstances. "I came here to marry a rancher who had advertised for a wife. When I arrived, he decided I was not suitable and has arranged for my return to Philadelphia tomorrow." Daniel's expression darkened. What kind of man invites a woman to travel across the country and then turns her away? That is unconscionable. "Papa," Lucy said quietly, "maybe Miss Isabella could stay with us instead. Our house is big and she knows how to braid hair properly, and she has a nice voice for singing." "Lucy," Daniel said gently, "that is not how these things work." But Isabella could see something in his eyes that suggested he was not entirely opposed to his daughter's suggestion. Over the past few minutes of conversation, she had sensed in him the same loneliness that Lucy had observed, the particular exhaustion of a parent trying to be everything to a child who needed more than any one person could provide. "Mr. Morrison," Isabella said carefully, "I do not want to impose on your kindness, but I find myself in a difficult situation. I have no money for lodging tonight, and barely enough for meals on the journey back east. If there were some way I could work for a few days to earn enough for proper travel expenses, I would be very grateful." Daniel studied her face, seeing honesty there along with the quiet desperation of someone with very few options. "Miss Martinez, we could certainly use help at the ranch. Lucy is right that our house is large and there is more work than I can manage alone while caring for her properly." Lucy clapped her hands together with excitement. "Does that mean Miss Isabella can stay with us?" "For a few days," Daniel said carefully, "while she decides what she wants to do next." As they walked toward Daniel's wagon, Lucy slipped her small hand into Isabella's and said quietly, "Miss Isabella, I have been praying every night for God to send someone who could be my mama. Do you think maybe you getting on the wrong train was part of God's plan?" Isabella felt her heart catch at the innocent faith in the child's voice. "Lucy, I do not know about God's plans, but I do know that meeting you has been the best part of a very difficult day." 3 weeks later, Isabella still had not boarded a train back to Philadelphia. What had begun as a temporary arrangement had evolved into something none of them had expected. Isabella had proven invaluable at the ranch, not just with domestic tasks, but with the bookkeeping and correspondence that Daniel had been struggling to manage alone. More importantly, Lucy had blossomed under the attention of someone who understood the particular needs of a motherless girl. "Isabella," Daniel said one evening as they sat on the porch watching Lucy play with her bear in the yard, "I need to ask you something important." Isabella looked at him expectantly, her heart racing at the serious tone in his voice. "I know you. Came here planning to marry a man who proved himself unworthy of your trust," Daniel continued. "And I know that Lucy and I are not the life you had planned for yourself. But I have to ask if you might consider staying permanently, not as hired help but as my wife and Lucy's mother." Isabella felt tears spring to her eyes as she processed what he was asking. "I know it is presumptuous," Daniel continued quickly, "and I know we have only known each other for a few weeks. But Lucy has never been happier. And I find myself hoping every morning that this will not be the day you decide to leave us." Before Isabella could answer, Lucy came running up to the porch, her face flushed with excitement from play. "Miss Isabella, I have been thinking about what you said about God's plans, and I have a question." "What is that, sweetheart?" Lucy climbed onto Isabella's lap and whispered in her ear, just loud enough for Daniel to hear, "Can you be my mommy? Forever? Because I love you and Papa loves you too, even though he is too shy to say it properly." Isabella looked at this little girl who had become the daughter of her heart, then at Daniel, whose eyes held a question he was afraid to ask directly. "Lucy," Isabella said softly, "I cannot imagine anything that would make me happier than being your mommy forever." 6 months later, as Isabella Morrison stood in the kitchen of their ranch house, teaching Lucy how to make the bread that had become the little girl's favorite, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this unexpected happiness. The man who had rejected her had inadvertently led her to the family she was meant to find. Mama Isabella, Lucy said, using the name that had evolved naturally over the months. Do you think there are other ladies sitting on train benches right now, waiting for God to show them where they belong? Isabella smiled, remembering her own moment of despair that had led to the greatest joy of her life. I think, sweetheart, that sometimes the most beautiful destinations are the ones we never plan to visit. Sometimes love finds us not when we are looking for it, but when we have given up hope entirely. And sometimes the most precious families are formed not by blood or expectation, but by the simple recognition that we have found the people we were always meant to cherish.